introduce Dr. Chandra Muzaffar. As we said at the beginning, he is the president of the International Movement for a Just World, which is based in Malaysia. Chandra has published, he's a thinker and a reformist, and he has published extensively on civilizational dialogue, international politics, religion, human rights, and on Malaysian society. He has something like 32 books in English and Malay, and many of his writings have been translated into other languages. His most recent publication is something that is a must-read, A World in Crisis, Is There a Cure? In 1977, he founded a multi-ethnic social reform group called Aliran, which he led for 14 years. Today, apart from his role in Just, Chandra also sits on the board of a number of international NGOs concerned with social justice and civilizational dialogue. He was professor and director at the Center for Civilizational Dialogue in the University of Malaya for 22 years, for 2 years, from 1997 to 1999, and then professor of global studies at the University in Malaysia. Chandra travels abroad very frequently, a popular speaker, both meetings at home and overseas and at home in Malaysia, and is the recipient, is a much awarded recipient of a number of international awards related to his scholarship and social activism. It's an honor to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ranjan. Nice to be in the company of old friends like Prof. Kim Young Bock, and of course Irfan and all the others whom I've known for a very long while, and to meet new ones like Philip Peacock. Friends, what I'll do in this very brief presentation is to first summarize the essential points that had emerged in the course of our discussion very quickly, and then focus upon certain things that we can all do as part of our struggle, as part of our attempt to continue to pursue this noble cause. A very quick summary. If one looks at almost all the presentations, it is obvious that the challenge of Christian-Zionism revolves around two pillars. One is theological, and the second is related to power and politics. Now, the theological dimension is very clear. If you believe that the creation of Israel in 1948 was ordained, that what a lot of people see as occupation is something which is the fulfillment of a divine plan, and if you believe that there would be the return of the Messiah and there would be the conversion of everyone to Christianity, including Jews and Muslims and others, if you believe in these ideas and you're totally committed to them, as some of the Christian Zionists in the United States are, then I think you have a major theological challenge. Because I can't think of any religion which attempts to root its faith on notions of society that impinge upon the rights of other human beings in this manner. And this, I think, is at the heart of the question of Christian-Muslim relations, at the heart of relations between Christians and Jews, and increasingly Christians and people of other faith. because it is a theology, unlike most theologies, that seek to embrace human beings, that celebrate the oneness of the human family in all the great philosophies from the East to the West. But here you have a theology which is a distortion of the universal message of Christianity. It is a distortion of what is noble and sublime in Christianity. Instead, what it seeks to do is to create an atmosphere of animosity and antagonism in its very theological foundations. And if you believe in this distorted notion of religion, you will justify the wars, the conquests, attempts to wipe out thousands and thousands of people, kill, imprison them, which is what has been happening in Palestine and other parts of the Arab world. This is something which has created a huge challenge for humanity. Why? Not simply because of the distortion of theology, it's because no one recognizes this, especially those who are powerful, who are right at the apex of power. They don't recognize this as a problem. They don't see this as something that should be confronted. They do not ever want to admit that this is the problem. Instead, it is Islamic militancy, it is other forms of terrorism, that this is what is causing problems. There's no doubt at all that there are problems with militancy, there are problems with terrorism, all these problems we acknowledge. But this is a fundamental challenge, the way in which a theology which was born out of love and compassion has been distorted in this manner, and it has become so powerful because it is linked to the people at the very apex of society, as my friend Illan Pappe pointed out. It is so closely linked to the upper echelons of society. Now, this is the root problem, and it's directly connected with power, which is the other pillar that I talked about, theology and power. So when you have your wars, whether it is the wars related to Palestine, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, all the other wars that have taken place, the attempts to isolate Iran, is all seen as justified, as something that is ordained, as something that has to happen, because as some interviews that I listened to before the last US presidential election, there were people who were saying that these are things that had to happen because it's ordained. And the man who is at the helm of the United States at that time, now on the way out, he has been chosen for this role. So you look at the way in which theology is deeply enmeshed with power. And the power here means conquest. It means killing. It means wiping out people. Now, Christian Zionism is also related, as shown by a number of the other presenters, including our moderator right at the outset, Professor Kim Young Bock. It is related to a number of other ideas which have captured the imagination of segments of our society. For instance, it is related to Islamophobia, without any doubt at all. But let us not make the mistake of arguing, as some have done, that it is because of Christian Zionism there's Islamophobia. It's not true. Islamophobia preceded Christian Zionism. If Christian Zionism is linked to 17th century England and with a certain phase of colonialism, we know that Islamophobia has a longer history. But it has strengthened Islamophobia, the hatred towards Muslims, the fear about Muslims, the way in which Muslims have been stigmatized. Likewise, we find that Christian Zionism is deeply related with hegemony. And again, hegemony did not begin with Christian Zionism. It has got a much longer history. In fact, some would even argue that it is linked perhaps to an earlier distortion of Christianity. But perhaps it's more than that. If you look at the experiences of various other societies, hegemony is linked to power, it is linked to dominance, it's linked to control. And Christian Zionism in our age has strengthened hegemony. And it is what has been driving hegemony, as you can see in the Iraq War, as you can see in various other episodes. So Christian Zionism has sort of bolstered hegemony. And hegemony remains one of our major challenges. It is a greater challenge than most other challenges because it impacts upon societies everywhere. And it's linked to the centers of power, regardless of what nationality is and what its background is. So the ultimate analysis, friends, we are taking on hegemony when we talk about Christian Zionism. We are taking on Islamophobia, we're taking on other types of phobias, we're taking on militancy, terrorism, all the rest of it. They're all intertwined with Christian Zionism. It is not the sole cause of the challenges that confront us, but it has complicated the situation that faces us today. What about the remedies? If you can talk about remedies. I would argue that explaining, analyzing, telling people what is really happening is so very important. And I think all our speakers emphasize this over and over again, that it is so important to explain, make people understand the nexus between various issues, connect the dots, and argue and to convince people this is a major, major task, education. And it should be done in all languages, not just in the English language or in certain other languages, in languages which will become increasingly significant in the future, Chinese, Korean, perhaps other languages. We have to do that. Make people understand, make people really come to terms, as it were, with the root causes of the challenges that face us. At the same time, I would like to suggest that while we explain and try to raise awareness, it is also our duty to give hope. The struggle for justice sometimes does not achieve its goals. It falls by the wayside because we lose hope. So hope is important. And I think in this struggle against Christian Zionism, but more than that, the struggle for Palestine, for justice, and not just justice for the Palestinians, but justice for all human beings everywhere. There are reasons to hope, and we must highlight those conditions and circumstances which give rise to hope. In the case of the Palestinian struggle, I see the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, as something that provides hope. It has ignited the imagination of people in many parts of the world, especially the Western world. And we should strengthen that movement in whatever way we can. Number two, I think the other thing that gives us a lot of hope, which someone alluded to, is the relationship between Christians and Muslims in Palestine, in that part of the world. In spite of all the challenges that they faced, in spite of the attempts to strengthen bigotry in a very conscious manner, you find that Christians and Muslims have stood their ground. They work together. And there are Jews who are also part of that movement. And this, I think, is very, very significant. This is the blessed land where we have had these three great faiths coming together. And it goes beyond these three faiths. People of different faiths can work together. And the cooperation between Muslims and Christians gives us hope. We should make people aware of this. Not many people know of the very strong relationships that exist in that part of the world between people of different faiths. Very often I tell people, you know, that one of the great churches in Palestine, the holders of the keys to the church, they are Muslims. It's a Muslim family. So in the midst of Muslim bigotry, where there is this attempt to be exclusive, you find that examples like this inspire us. And this inspiring examples should be emphasized over and over again. Let me give yet another example of hope in this situation. The global system is changing. This is reason for hope for the future. There's no doubt at all that US power is declining. It will not come back. It is an irreversible trend in history. The decline of US power and the decline of the centers of Western civilization as we have known it. Of course, it will always be important, these centers, but perhaps in a different form. A metamorphosis may take place. But nonetheless, decline in terms of the way in which power was exercised for so long, for at least 250 years, that decline is most obvious. And that is going to impact upon situations in different parts of the world, and especially upon West Asia, upon Palestine and countries that. That's also reason for hope. But most of all, and I want to conclude on this note, in any struggle, the most important factor is the resistance of the people who are the victims. That is what provides hope. And I can think of very few people in the world who have resisted power, dominant power, betrayal, treachery, the way in which the Palestinians have. This is really amazing. It's a small population. It's a small piece of land, but their resistance is the reason for hope, which is why I want to conclude by reading a small poem, which my friend, a Christian Palestinian, had distributed some time ago. This is Masin Kumsiye, and it's a poem by someone by the name of Kozim Kuzi. Very quickly, if I may read this, Ranjan. All your armies, all your fighters, all your tanks and all your soldiers against a boy holding a stone. Standing there all alone, in his eyes, I see the sun. In his smile, I see the moon. And I wonder, I only wonder, who is weak and who is strong? Who is right and who is wrong? And I wish, I only wish, that the truth has a tongue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chandra. Very inspiring and forward-looking conclusion and showing the hopeful ways ahead.